Last week I stumbled on something sinister in and amongst our collection. An unwelcome squad of micro beasts were creeping around the homes of our ants. Unsuspecting to me, these creatures were multiplying until there were thousands of them. Luckily, we finally have an ID from an expert to help us eliminate this potential threat with a homemade elixir tonic. Also, the votes are in. I announced the winning ants to be added to our collection. Keep watching to see who won and what's next for this community voted queen. But first, welcome to another episode of The Ant Keeper, where I upload every week about all things ants related. If you find yourself enjoying this video, then subscribe and join the AK Colony. Your support really helps me out and I really appreciate it. We are well on my way to reaching my goal of 2,000 subscribers by this channel's 1-year anniversary in September. It still makes my day to see new people joining in with us every day. Once we hit our goal, I'm going to do a giveaway to celebrate our community. If you haven't clicked that button yet, then you know what to do. Subscribe and join now. Last week we discovered our collection was ridden with thousands and thousands of mites. They are everywhere, inside the outworlds, in the test tubes, and even crawling around on the shelves themselves. After assessing the colonies affected by the mites, I knew I had to get a sample and send it off to an entomologist to find out what type of mite infestation we have, and if we can even treat them. If you haven't seen last week's video, then you should definitely check it out now to catch up. The link to that video is in the description below. There are two primary types of mites, parasitic and phoretic. The parasitic mites attach themselves to the host, literally sucking the life out of them until they die. If you could choose which type of mite you had, this is the mite you would not choose to have. Ant keepers who endure an infestation of these types of mites almost always experience a 100% death rate throughout their affected colonies. AK Colony, after waiting days for what felt like months, I finally have a reply from the entomologist. I received the email that would tell us definitively what the future would be for our ant colonies. I can finally say with a huge sigh of relief that the type of mites we have are phoretic mites. Honestly, I was really stressed about what the future outcome of our ants would be, knowing the devastation parasitic mites can cause. However, after reading the comments from you, AK Colony, you helped bring me a sense of relief, whilst we were waiting for the email reply from the expert. These phoretic mites have been using the ants as a means to get around. They don't feast on the living queens and workers in the colonies, rather they act as a type of cleanup crew, acting quickly to eat up any leftover proteins discarded by the ants. This would make total sense, since we couldn't see any of the mites in our previous video, so these mites really are more of a nuisance than anything else. What a relief. I can't describe how pleased I am to find out that these mites are actually helping the ants more than they are harming the ants. Now that we know what type of mites we have, this gives us the information we need to help eliminate the conducive conditions or the things that are attracting the mites, and how to treat them effectively and precisely. Ants are tough, but we definitely don't want to risk poisoning the ants accidentally. This week I've been trialing a special botanical tonic to kill off the mites. AK Colony, we are armed and ready to rescue our beloved ants. Last week I asked you, the AK Colony, to vote on which of the top 5 most popular ants would be added next to our collection. You commented on which ant you would like to see us get next, and voted on the top 5 finalists. The winner of the AK Colony community vote is the Pheidale Antipodum. Thank you everyone who put forth their opinion and voted on choosing this remarkable ant. A Pheidale definitely was not what I was expecting as a top choice, and you know what? That's exactly why I wanted you to choose our next ant. I want this new queen ant to be a special first for us. We will watch this queen grow, develop generations of workers, and move from nest to nest. Every single decision about this colony will 100% be up to you. If you have ever been curious about keeping an ant, or maybe you want one but just can't have one right now, you can vote and have your say so you can really know what it's like to be an ant keeper. For all those who really wanted one of the other ants to win, be assured, these will be the next ants to arrive in time. For the next couple of months, I'm focusing on dramatically improving the quality of the videos to make watching them all the more entertaining. Then I'll go back into focusing on adding new queen ants and colonies into our ever-growing collection. So what's next for the new queen ant? As soon as she arrives, I'll introduce her to you, and I'll ask you where we're going to house her, what we're going to feed her, what we're going to name her. Every decision is up to you. If you have one of these queens for sale, message me on Instagram at TheAntKeeper so we can have a chat. I'd love to know, what are you most looking forward for about having your very own virtual ant? It's time to remove the conducive conditions that are attracting these pesky mites. The first step when treating a pest is to assess what exactly is attracting them, and then remove or change those items wherever possible, and then lastly treat with our Elixir tonic. These phoretic mites are attracted to uneaten protein foods discarded by the ants' colonies. Since we're going over some of these outworlds, I feel it's time to even replace as much of the old substrate as possible, since it's likely there will be some hidden pieces of crickets and mealworms buried in the sand. Also, I'm disinfecting the lids, water feeders, and anything else that's removable without disturbing the colony too much, since this is a great step in helping remove as much of the infestation as possible. I've used hot soapy water to clean the bits and pieces and air dried wherever I can to minimize any chance of cross-contamination. I recommend to help manage an outbreak of phoretic mites quicker to remove any uneaten food left over by ants after a couple of days. Also, I've started a cleaning schedule alongside my feeding schedule. This will help me keep track for which colony is due to be cleaned next. Lastly, I'm going to carefully examine any new queen ants or colonies I find or buy for mites, and quarantine wherever necessary for 2 weeks in the naughty corner. I feel like 2 weeks is long enough for the mites to be seen with the naked eye. I'd also urge any ant keeper to examine their collection carefully periodically for mites or any other pests for good measure. Once the key items have been cleaned, it's time to add in our Elixir tonic. Mites are extremely sensitive to acidity. Citrus fruits like lemon have a gentle balance when diluted with water to attack an unwelcome army of mites. I've done several tests and found that mixing 1 part lemon juice with 3 parts water is enough to give the kick to kill the mites without bothering the ants. If the mix is too strong, the ants are smart enough to mostly avoid it, and if it's too weak, then the mites don't seem to die off, or at least the lemon juice takes too long to be effective during my observations. When treating, I've opted with using 3 different methods. For the test tubes, I've cut off a tiny piece of lemon, put a droplet of water on it, and placed that in an aluminum dish beside the protein source. The dish helps contain the moisture to not affect the brood inside. I then remove the lemon piece after 48 hours, wait a further 48 hours as a break, and then reintroduce the lemon piece. It's a fiddly process, but with so little information online on effectively treating these mites, I'm not willing to take any undue risk on our colonies. For the outworlds, I've again added a piece of lemon next to the protein source wherever possible. I've also applied a light blanket spray of fine mist to reach all the affected areas. I haven't added any lemon juice to the water source or any other element of the setup. I have conducted this on the same schedule as the test tubes, and I'm currently on my 3rd rotation. Since starting the decontamination treatment with our Elixir tonic, I've noticed fairly consistent results. The outworlds have visually dropped in mite population by around 65 to 80% since the beginning of the treatment cycle. The test tubes have varied in success, with some test tube setups experiencing a 100% visual extermination, whilst others noting just a 25 to 50% visual change. From what I have observed throughout this entire experiment, is that the colonies are affected by the treatment and that the mites are experiencing a dramatic decline in numbers. I'm expecting the mite population to cease amongst our collection in around about a month's time based on the current trends so far. I would caution anyone treating their ants for mites to exercise due diligence and the very best of luck. If you made it this far, then make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me out. Also, have you subscribed and become part of the AK colony? If you haven't, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe and be a part of one of the fastest growing colonies here on YouTube. Thank you everyone for watching this week's episode. I'll see you on the next video. Until then, Ant Keepers Unite.